Are you on a well system and you turn on the faucet and the water is barely trickling out, or worse, not coming out at all? You might need a new pressure switch. A well pump pressure switch is an electrical device that cycles on and off with the demand of the pump to provide you with water pressure. Although they're pretty simple in their design, they basically are spring-loaded and turn on and off. If yours is not working, it will leave you without water. The method in which they function is pretty simple. They turn on at a preset low pressure and then turn off when you get to the desired pressure. They come in different pressures, but this one is a 40-60, which means it turns on when the water pressure is at 40 psi and turns off when it gets to 60. This is a typical water system for Southwest Florida where we live. The blue tank on the right is what regulates the pressure. It's got the water going through it as well as an air bladder to give constant air pressure. And then this little gray box with the ants on it is the pressure switch. I mentioned that there are ants on it because insects getting into the contacts are a frequent cause of failure. We have fire ants because we've had a lot of rain, so they're kind of crawling around everywhere. And if they seek higher ground and get up into the pressure switch, they'll get between the two little contacts. Those contacts are what make electrical connection and cause the pump to turn on, and then once you get to the desired pressure, to turn off. You'll see them open right here. That means that the pressure switch has reached 60 psi. While you're outside by your water softening system, it's a good time to check everything and also make sure you've got enough salt. I add about 1 bag of salt per month. The blue pressure tank has a little valve on top that is kind of like a bicycle tire valve. I'll explain more about that a little bit later on. Next, you'll need to turn the power off and also turn off the main water supply. I already turned off the breaker in the garage, and now I am turning off the main to the house. I'm glad I checked it with the meter because I thought I had turned it off and it still had power. That little tester is a voltage tester that just tells you if you have power or not. And then this is a multimeter that I also had to confirm exactly how much power was going to that. And it's 120 volts, but it's also both legs, so it's really a 220 volt service. I realized I had made a mistake, and I turned off one breaker that went to the well pump, but I forgot that we had a transfer switch put in, and the breaker was moved to the other breaker panel. So once I turned that off, I confirmed that in fact there was no power. Good thing I had the little meter, otherwise I would have been in for a nasty shock. So doubly confirmed it with the multimeter just because I'm paranoid about it getting electrocuted. Once it was all shut down, I turned on the outside garden hose and bled all of the water pressure out of the house system. There's also a PSI gauge on the whole pump system so I could watch it fall down to 0. Connecting this new switch is actually relatively straightforward, but I didn't want to take anything to chance, so I just marked each of the wires, 1, 2, 3, and 4 little marks, so I would know what order they went back on. I also took a picture with my phone, once again, just to be doubly sure. All you have to do is remove the old wires, but if you use the wrong size screwdriver, it's difficult. So go back and get the correct size screwdriver, and then remove the screws and the wires. There are going to be 4 wires and then also the 2 ground wires that are underneath, and those are color-coded green. It's pretty straightforward wiring. Once I got all the wires separated out, they were in conduit with a little bit of a locking ring, so I used a flathead screwdriver to loosen the ring and then took it off and pulled everything away from the switch housing. That way it made it a lot easier for me to replace the new switch. You can see the carcass of some sort of prehistoric animal that was in there before. It was probably some sort of a Florida little creature we had, but they for some reason, get into these boxes and give up their life to get rid of your well pressure in the middle of the night when you most need it. You can see here I've pulled the conduit away, and now just you unscrew the old switch, and it's on a little standpipe. I believe this is a 1/2 inch. I don't recall the diameter, but it's a standard size. And then once I removed the old switch, I took off the remnants of the Teflon tape and cleaned it up a little bit, and then I put some new Teflon tape on it, and then the new switch just screws right on. And then it gives you a little bit of leeway. There are a lot of threads there, and when you put the new switch on, just turn it until it's nice and tight, and then maybe give it another turn to get it oriented where the wiring needs to be. Also, make sure that you put the Teflon tape on in a clockwise manner, the same way that you're turning the switch onto the threads. You'll see a little lever on the side. It looks kind of like an Allen wrench. That will come into play later when you are recharging the system back up. That allows you to manually turn it on, and then you flip it back into the auto position and it will continue to run. I took this opportunity to cut the old frayed wire ends off because I had enough wire to work with that I could get a new piece of wire coming out of the end of it. And I threaded it through, and at first I started to strip off the wire and make like a J shape with a pair of needle nose pliers and wrap it around the post and tighten it up. But this is a very heavy gauge wire, and being stranded and everything, when I go to tighten it up, it started to just kind of smash down. So I came up with a better solution. Once I got all the wires squared away and threaded through and cut all the old corroded ends off, I made sure that they were kind of lined up in that 1, 2, 3, 4 order that I had done previously before taking it apart. And then I also took that opportunity to reconnect the ground wires. I stripped the ends off, and then I had a bunch of heat shrink ring terminals I've used from working on the boat, and I found it to be a lot easier. Plus, when I go to fix it in the future, I can just put them right back on the screw. So I put the ring terminals on, crimped them into place, and I think these are number 10. It's a small diameter hole. And then I used my little butane torch and heat shrinked the covers down, and then I installed them back, and I thought it made for a really nice, neat, and clean installation. Now this little valve here, this is supposed to be set at 2 psi below what the threshold of your switch is. So we had a 4060 switch we replaced, so this should be pumped up to 38 psi, which would be 2 psi less than 40. That's when it's empty. Then when it's all closed up and you put the water back into the system, it will be pressurized correctly. When I put the meter on it first, it was only at 16 psi. And I don't think this had been ever attended to since the house was built, which was 11 years ago. So it's probably just normal maintenance to check it. Then I slowly turned the water back on once I got it all pumped up, and put the power back on to the pump system from that breaker that's in the garage that I forgot about. And then you can manually close the contacts with that little lever, and that will allow it to start filling up. And then once it gets to the correct PSI, it will turn itself off. So I'm putting the power back on, and I'm going to check to make sure that it fills up, and turn that little lever right there. It's marked on the right side of the case. It says like auto on and off or something like that. And then it will fill itself up. You can see the pressure building. And then sure enough, it worked. So I was happy with that. Our local well company is very honest and reputable, and they charge $160 currently to replace this switch. I paid $28 for it on Amazon, and I like to learn how to do stuff. Thanks for watching.